Conservation Commission. This meeting is hereby called to order under the authority of Mass General Law 131, Section 40, the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw and Stormwater Management Erosion Control Bylaw. Notice is given that both a video and an audio recording will be made of this meeting. The agent will now call the roll call for attendance.
Thank you. Arthur Page.
Here.
Kurt Turner.
Here.
Bob Garner.
Here.
Judy Keys.
Here.
Dan Shinnick.
Here.
Sam Strife.
Here.
Howard Vogel.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum present.
All right, do we have any administrative items first?
Yes, we do. I would like to respectfully request that our payroll be reviewed and approved. And this is a backup of our hours. If I may request, this is a request for pay a vendor for postage or notice mailing of notice of intent application. Probably want to get a statement soon, so I'd like to have that ready. This is the backup receipt for that mailing. And finally, a request for reimbursement for expenditure for labeling tape. We'll use in the office. And that's the backup receipt for that.
People just came in.
Could you sign in?
Sure.
Should be blank pages on.
Or
that
just on the
page.
back, or will it just?
No, there's multiple pages in this. So it should be fine.
Ford deer cross in front of me in Weathersfield, just about a half mile back up the road.
Tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Oh, shit. That's not.
All right, that brings an end to the administrative.
Yes.
Okay, you want me to read right from these?
No.
Combined? Okay.
No, I have,
That's right.
we've prepared.
All right, this is the Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40, as amended, and the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. A public hearing will be held on Tuesday, January 30th, 2018, 7 p.m., Room 5, Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street, to consider a notice of intent application, DEP file number 63-0669, filed by Raleigh Solar LLC, for the proposed construction of a 4-acre solar photovoltaic system, gravel access drive, stormwater facilities, utilities, and associated grading, possibly within 100 foot of a buffer zone, to a bordering vegetated wetland at 599 607 615, 623 Weathersfield Street, map 11, parcel lots 53, 58-1, 58-2, 58-2A, land off of Weathersfield Street, which is map 11, parcels 54, 54-1, and 58, and land off of Pine Needle Lane, Georgetown, Mass, map 11, parcel lot 56 in Rowley, Mass.
Mr. Chairman, I'm suggesting that we read the notice for the stormwater management.
This is
permit
two separate
application.
items, we're gonna read them because it's all one item, basically.
Same applicant.
In accordance to the Town of Raleigh Stormwater Management Erosion Control Bylaw, as amended by public hearing, will be held on Tuesday, December 5th, 2017, 8:30 PM, Town Hall Annex located at 39 Central Street, to consider stormwater management. Now, did you mean for that to be December?
No,
No.
Debbie was supposed to correct it for
Okay.
today's date, sorry. about
Sorry about that. The proposed construction of a 4-acre photovoltaic system, gravel access drive, stormwater facilities, utilities associated, grading, possibly within 100 foot of a buffer zone of bordering vegetated wetland at 599, 607, 615, and 623 Weathersfield, map 11, parcel lots 53, 58-1, 58-2, and 58-2A, land off Weathersfield Street, map 11, parcels 54, 54-1, and 58, land off of Pine Needle Lane, Georgetown, map 11, parcel lot 56, in Raleigh, Mass. Total site disturbance is approximately 450,000 square feet. So what I would like to say at first, I know there's a lot of concerned citizens, we'd like to hear everybody, but this is it's not whether or not we like it or you like it, it's what is regards, any questions tonight in regards to the stormwater management and or the conservation. Okay, so I will be picking people. If you have any questions, just raise your hand, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, Robert Blanchett, civil engineer, Camden Engineering, Amesbury, representing Rowley Solar. I'd like to thank the commission for taking their time tonight to meet with us and listen to our presentation. For the commission, I have revised grading and drainage plans dated today that reflect the design that will be presented in a few minutes. I also have the revised portions of the applicable portions of the bylaw fee worksheet, page 1 of the notice of intent, and the first 2 pages of the stormwater management permit application.
Great.
And there's 3 copies here for you.
Will the office be receiving full
Yes.
revised sets in
Yeah,
the near
let's,
future?
we'll get through tonight,
Okay.
and then, what we didn't quite finish were the stormwater calculations.
Okay.
They're nearly complete, they'll be finished tomorrow, and I'll provide you with a copy of those tomorrow, along with the planning board and, the planning board's peer review engineer, Mr. Graham. So we've gone through a design revision since we last spoke. The design revision was out of necessity, given the dynamics of the project and the need to produce at least 2 megawatts of power. We decided to go back to implement a previous design that was presented to both the commission and the planning board. I believe it was in early January. So the area here, if you remember, we had a design where we presented a solar array system here, but with significantly more buffer zone work. This and this were not quite going to give us the 2 megawatts that the applicant needs. So per direction of their solar engineer, we reinstated a portion of this design. There's a little bit of work within the buffer zone, between the fence and the buffer zone up and through here. And the square footage is approximately 22,500 square feet. In addition to that, and as presented in the previous design, there's buffer zone work through here associated with the road. And of course, during the last hearing, I presented this wetland that Brent and I discovered a couple weeks ago. We are also proposing work within that buffer zone. So the total square footage of work within the buffer zone is 42,080 square feet as presented in the design this evening. Of course, that necessitated additional stormwater calculations, which we're gonna wrap up tomorrow. Since the last meeting though, actually almost a week ago, I received peer review comments from Graham, Mr. Graham, on the previous design, which was this area, and this area, where this design reflects addressing all of Mr. Graham's comments. So what's left for him to look at is the new stormwater design for this road extension, the basins, the outfalls, and of course for us tonight to discuss the work within the buffer zone.
For clarity,
Yes, sir.
so we're keeping the whole area up there that we talked about last time,
This
That
entire
stays.
area, yes.
and then you added this area.
We added this area, correct.
Okay, and then the front area is gone?
No, the front stays.
That
It's
stays
been,
gone. So everything we see there is what's gonna be built?
if approved, yes.
If approved?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Just getting clarity.
It's getting bigger.
That's bigger.
yeah.
Are those a separate set of panels on the west side of the road on the westernmost? Is that
Yes.
those panels there? Okay.
That's correct, yes.
And how many
Do you wanna
acres
go
is
through
this?
the rest of your slides and stuff that you provided, or? How do you
Well,
want?
I'm gearing it as it pertains to how it, I'm trying to keep it as the content as germane as I can to the Conservation Commission. So there's lots we can talk about, but most of the work is outside the 100-foot buffer zone. What's changed from the previous design is this additional work here, within 100 feet.
Okay.
Brenda, are you
We're doing the
aware of?
stormwater management
Yes, it's,
permit application here at the same time, which is
Correct.
germane
Okay,
to
that's right.
the entire site.
Agreed.
So we can segue in now, if you want to. The commission has been given a comment memo tonight. The commission's also received some correspondence. I don't know if the chairman wants me to read that into the record.
I would like it, I have a question here first, let me just,
Well, I'm trying to
I would like you to read
I'm
that.
trying to get the information out there so it may be relevant to some questions that arise later
I
on.
think it's gonna be very relevant. Let me have you just read the memos,
Okay.
if you'd like, or I'll read them.
Yeah. I'll just do this here. Okay, starting with, commission received an email after their meeting of January 23rd, so we received an email on January 24th from Andrew Dangelmayer and Sarah Bajor of 591 Weathersfield Street. Hello, can you please look into what, if any, chemicals are used to clean the panels? We have well water and are concerned with contamination of it and surrounding wetlands. Also concerned with environmental impact of bringing heavy machinery in with various hazardous fluids, parentheses, oil, gas, ATF, coolant, hydraulic fluid, etc., into parentheses, likely to contaminate the area. Also, why would Raleigh allow such a large area to have all these trees cut down, comma, road built, comma, animal habitats ruined, comma, scenery ruined, comma, wetlands affected, comma, etc., when there are other places already devoid of any such things on top of commercial buildings on Route 1, brownfields, old mobile at Route 1, 133 intersection, etc. This makes absolutely no sense. We moved up here 2 years ago to get away from the city and be closer to the woods. This is our first home that we planned on living in for decades. We are very concerned about this project going forward. Thank you for your time. So we reached out to the applicant and their representative, and so I'm just going to go through and read the response that I was able to email back after getting input in regards to this. So dear Mr. Dangelmayer, thanks for your email inquiry concerning Raleigh Solar Project. We submitted your inquiry about cleaning the panels to the applicant and their engineer. Your email was also forwarded to the planning department, since your second paragraph touched upon many subjects that seem related to their project site plan review process. The response about cleaning was as follows, and this is Ms. Bonnie Berkowitz. We are quite fortunate in Raleigh to have a solar array installed and built to reference. I can't speak for the current solar array operation and management. I can share with you, when I spoke with Mr. Freitag, he told me that there has been a vehicle enter the array area one time. I can, however, state that there is no cleaning of solar panels for our proposed Raleigh Solar Community Solar project. There are no chemicals. We do not and have never utilized chemicals, toxins, cancer-causing agents such as Roundup, parentheses, merely as an example, not to single out a product, end of parentheses, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, or categories or products on our farm, parentheses, from day one to present, end of parentheses, whatsoever. As we have conversed, we are beekeepers and biodynamic, better than organic farmers. Feel free to contact should there be any further queries, regards, Bonnie Berkowitz. Second response, Mr. Blanchett. Most of the panels will not need to be cleaned even when covered with snow. In the rare instance when they may need to be cleaned, no chemicals will be used. The panels will be cleaned during the next rain event or rinsed with clean potable water. A circumstance that may require the panels to be cleaned may include an unusually thick layer of pollen or dust. Hope this helps. Regards, Robert Blanchett, professional engineer. On behalf of the Commission, the response to your statement concerning the wetlands affected is that the current layout as submitted to the Conservation Commission demonstrated a focused effort to avoid any regulated wetland resource areas, both bordering and isolated vegetated wetlands, and to minimize portions of the project which are within the 100-foot buffer zone to wetland resource areas. The Commission's focus is to appropriately apply the regulations to such projects and achieve the least amount of impact possible to regulated wetland areas and their buffer zones. Thanks for your email. That was like conservation. So that was the earliest correspondence. Today we received two more emailed communications. First one is addressed dear board members and was also copied to the Raleigh Planning Board. I am writing to you in support of Raleigh Solar Project on the Berkowitz Farm. Harnessing sustainable, renewable solar energy on the farm is every bit as appropriate as other sustainable farm uses, such as growing food and harvesting forest products, and all can be compatibly produced. Supporting solar energy as an alternative to non-renewable fossil fuels should now be a high priority for all communities. Having worked with many farm and forest owners, I also know that solar energy provides an incentive to conserve their land by creating an additional renewable resource. Locally produced energy, food, and timber are all vital sustainable uses of our farm and forest land, and it is important to remember that the productivity of the soil, which is the most important resource of all, is not altered by a solar array, and the land can always be used to grow other farm or forest products in the future. I urge your support of this worthwhile project. Thank you sincerely, John Robbins, Consulting Forester, 59 Wilson Road, Concord, Mass.
No.
Send it to his house.
The office did not reply because there didn't appear to be any questions involving wetland resource areas or the request for further information in that email. The Commission received a second email this afternoon. To whom it may concern, I am writing today to voice my support for the Raleigh Solar Project. I think that having a solar farm area that has potential to benefit every resident in town is a great idea. It harnesses and provides use of a natural resource that can lower the cost of everyone's electric bill and protects the farmland
That's not
for the
true.
future rather than dividing the land and having more homes built. I know that having the benefit of the solar power can defray some of the costs that are hitting our pockets with the building of a new school and fire department, parentheses, which are also needed, end of parentheses. And since my family is on a low fixed income, every bit of savings help. I hope you will support this solar project to help the greater good. Thank you. Jody Stoddard, School Street, Rowley. Again, the office did not respond. There didn't seem to be an inquiry or a question asked. So the commissioners also have a 2-page memo distributed this evening. And I'll just read that into the record from your agent, dated today, regarding notice of intent and stormwater management application at Landoff and 623 Weathersfield Street. And I cite the maps and parcels, which we've already heard, for Rowley Solar LLC, owner Maven Revocable Trust, combined memo number 3. The Rowley Conservation Commission office has not received any comments or status reports from H.L. Graham regarding the stormwater review for the subject project. The office review has identified that parcels not originally listed in the 2 applications to the commission are now subject to proposed activity. It is recommended that the appropriate application pages be updated and that surface disturbance figures and slopes be revised to reflect the most recent configuration. The office is recommending that a specific vegetation management plan be submitted to address long-term management of herbaceous cover under the panels and address the need to maintain full density of cover to mitigate stormwater runoff from the panels combined with possible grazing impacts. The office is recommending that a shading analysis prepared by a qualified professional be requested to address any buffer zone clearing to the 25-foot no-cut, no-disturbance zone to understand the effectiveness of solar panel placement in those areas. After consultation with town council, the following conditions are to be considered by the Conservation Commission for the above subject applications if permit issuance is contemplated, addressing the Chapter 61 designation of some of the affected parcels. Special condition as follows. The property owner / responsible party shall, before undertaking any cutting or trimming of trees and earth disturbance, consult with the Board of Selectmen and the principal assessor to determine whether the cutting of harvesting of trees in order to construct a solar photovoltaic facility will result in a conversion or change of use sufficient to disqualify the land from remaining in the Chapter 61 use classification tax scheme. The town holds a forestry tax lien on various parcels pursuant to MGL Chapter 61, parentheses, see Registry Book 30162, page 100, end of parentheses. Harvesting and cutting trees on the property for the proposed use as a solar photovoltaic facility may likely result in a conversion or change of use of the land sufficient to disqualify the land or individual parcels for classification as forestry land and subject to the various provisions of Chapter 61, including Sections 7 and 8. After consulting with the Board of Selectmen and principal assessor, the property owner / responsible party shall immediately report back to the commission to inform them of the determination of the inquiry. The property owner / responsible party shall demonstrate consummation of any required actions arising out of said inquiry to the satisfaction of the Rowley Conservation Commission. That's the end of the special commission. Standard condition number 24 has been revised upon the advice of town council also. The order of conditions granted, it reads as follows. The order of conditions granted to the applicant / property owner in this permit decision does not imply consent or approval of any other board, commission, or legal authority of any kind. The applicant property owner is responsible for obtaining all other required consents and approvals applicable to the proposed activity by any federal, state, or municipal body. End of standard condition. The commission still lacks information and an appropriate time period to review the new configuration presented to it. Permission for a continuance should be requested from the applicant.
You got a question?
Yeah, when I'm looking at the plot plan,
I'm sorry, could you please identify yourself?
sure,
so we know
I'm
who's
Carl
speaking?
Fritzen, 21 Forest Street,
Thank you.
and looking at the plot plan, I don't know that Forest Street's on the plot plan, and where they're proposing the additional panels, it would definitely affect stormwater runoff from our street and from the hills from where we live. Oh, I see Forest Street on that one.
Yeah, we're changing the presentation, and I'm gonna make a valiant attempt here to orient it so that we can see Forest Street and Brook Street. How's that?
Okay.
So Forest Street is here.
Okay.
The nearest point of proposed work from, this looks like this is Mellow, is 690 feet. From Fritzen is 688 feet. There's a wetland, a bordering vegetative wetland that separates the two land areas, if you will. So we are proposing a stormwater management system that's, of course, in compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act.
Brent, have you had a chance to look at it in that section yet?
I
I know you didn't get to.
Received these today at 5:30.
Right, okay, so that answers that.
We did.
By the grace of God, you got a memo tonight that hopefully is applicable.
We did walk that section for the previous design. Of course, this is slightly different. The premise is the same. It's, gravel drive on this side, stormwater controls through here. Previously, we had a stormwater basin back here, which we're not creating as much runoff with this design, so we really only need the one basin right about there. But the point is, we're bound by law to prove that we've met the 10 stormwater standards, right, prescribed in the Wetlands Protection Act. And our calculations go not only to the Conservation Commission, but the Planning Board's peer review engineer and Mass DEP Northeast Regional Office for review by 3 different parties.
I understand that, but I like to have our agent go out, and he goes over it with us, and with many pictures, and many things always show up, you know that.
Understood.
You've dealt with us before.
And two other points just to supplement the chairman. First off, the commission's policy is that the stormwater analysis utilized by the engineer representing the project utilizes more current rainfall data in order to pick up the fact that there has been increasing levels of precipitation occurring. Number 2, the request tonight in the memo about a vegetation management plan is specifically to address that there is an operating and maintenance plan component that specifically looks to facilitate and maintain the herbaceous cover underneath the panels because the vegetation is the most effective buffer and filtering and also velocity dissipating mechanism that there is. And so that is why that information was specifically called out in the memo request tonight.
Yeah, we can certainly prepare a vegetation management plan to go along with the, I would think, the operation and maintenance plan for the site.
Anybody else have any questions, Brendan?
I saw where Rick was. Can you show me where the Ernstroms are on that?
I'm sorry, who are you? Could you please?
Ernstrom, Joyce Ernstrom?
Thank you very much.
Right, so, let's see, this is a kind of a cruddy aerial image, but this is the Ernstrom parcel here. I believe this is your home, that's Fritzum's.
Yeah.
So, I'm actually pointing to your home, excuse me, I have to correct myself, where the closest point of work is 688 feet.
Okay. It's just really wet back there.
Yeah, this is a big bordering vegetated wetland through here.
Yeah. Where
It
that empty
stretches all the
space
way and back.
is wet.
Oh, what's that?
Where
I'm sorry.
that that space that's not green?
In here?
No, down. Right above the R.
Oh, this is a field.
Yeah, that's behind the buildings
behind the
in
house.
the
Yeah.
developed portion of the site.
Yeah. The limit of the wetland is this thick black line with the 3 dots,
Okay.
like that. The little grass.
The
symbol
the
with
funny
wetland
little
symbol.
tufts that are, the funny little tuft symbol is actually
Yeah.
a symbol for the wetland resource area
Okay.
where it was mapped.
Yes,
Greg Castrotis, 579 Weathersfield Street. Now, on that northern border on my property line, there's wetlands that have been identified. My understanding was that those arrays were gonna be pushed like 100 feet from that wetland area, but now you're telling me it's not going to be? Robert?
I'll address the chairman. So,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
so during the planning board site walk, yes, I did say that.
You say a lot of things.
But given the minimum requirements for this project, the minimum to generate that 2 megawatts, we had to propose work within 100 feet, but no closer than 25 feet. And the
Unacceptable for me.
applicant's willing to pay the wetland
Unacceptable.
buffer zone impact fee.
So
The area he's
we brought up
referring
the
to
image
is
right
right
here, yeah, so,
Right.
so the size or the distribution of the panels has been appropriately reduced to remove both the panels as well as the stormwater control mechanism of an earthen berm that's going to be installed in that area so that it's outside the 25-foot no cut, no disturbance area, and therefore in a portion of the 100-foot buffer zone that the commission has allowed various development activities and not found a negative impact to the associated, in this case, isolated vegetated wetland area located there.
there's no way that you could squeeze this in so that it got a majority of the people happy, so that you could move it away from the boundary lines,
So we can, I can answer that question. We did. If you
go back to the
go
other
to
map
maybe
there.
just to the
That's a
previous
big one.
page.
This one?
No, previous one. Go next, previous one to this one. There we go. So, along the common lot lines on this east side, this line, all the way up past Mr. Cassiotis's property, we've taken the minimum zoning bylaw setback, which is 15 feet, and we've made it 30 feet. So now we're no closer than 30 feet to the lot line with any of the panels along this common line. Within that 30 feet, we're still proposing our screening, our evergreen or blue spruce screening with a 7-foot fence. And whatever's left between the screening and the lot line will remain natural vegetation. So whatever's there now, low shrubs, tall trees.
Did you have a question?
Sure. I'm Tammy Graves, I'm 624 Weathersfield Street. There was something mentioned about a shading analysis that, in my understanding, that it will be done or has been done. Because I currently have, in various different times of the day, walked that street because I live right at the driveway there. And it still amazes me to think that those arrays that are in the front are going to receive any type of sunlight, because the trees on our side of Weathersfield Street are quite tall, and it totally shades that whole area. And I think I've said this before, but in varying times of the day as you drive down Weathersfield Street, it is in that specific area right there where the arrays are is a very, very dense area of shade, and the large majority of that is due to the fact of the trees on our side of the street. So I have a hard time understanding how these arrays are really going to receive the sunlight that they need to function to the kilowatt that they so desire. So I didn't know, is that something that is going to happen or has happened?
Actually, that's nothing in our control as us being as a conservation, because we're only keeping them off the wetlands,
Oh,
as
so shading
stormwater
doesn't have
management.
anything to do with you?
I
Well,
don't think
we've requested information that's germane to where this proposed project is within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland. The particular area that you're talking about, according to what I'm seeing here on the plans, this is the 100-foot buffer zone, which is the limit of the commission's jurisdictional authority under the Wetlands Act and the Wetlands Bylaw, and they are outside of it, so
So our hands are tied.
you may wish
But that'd be a
to
good question for the select,
direct that inquiry to the planning board.
or the planning board.
Okay, so my other, oh, I'm
So
sorry.
Frank, can I ask, so where you are asking for the shading analysis, where would that be on this?
I'm afraid I can't appropriately comment since the plans have just
Have been done.
been displayed and
So
done
it's wherever
tonight,
would- yeah,
but
okay.
based on Mr. Blanchett's testimony here, that there is portions of the project that are within the
So
100-foot
who-
buffer zone, so
So
we're,
where we do have jurisdiction, where there
Yeah.
is land that they may use,
Yeah.
where we would have jurisdiction, that's where we're suggesting that there would be a shade.
So who should we find this information from?
Selectmen and planning board.
Okay.
well,
Oh, not the information
I don't know
about
that
the
the-
shade, but I mean about any
That
problems
this is
with
gonna
it.
be-
Yeah.
you could
Done.
you could pose that request to the planning board to see if the planning board would support asking that on your behalf.
In the area
If
that
they-
she's
if-
worried about.
Right.
Well-
My other question is, so I understand where the arrays are, and I understand the farm is, it says 4.4 acres or whatever of, I'm assuming that means the arrays, or that's the solar?
That would be yes, the land under the panels. Yes.
But as far as tree, I'm trying to envision this in my head of what this is gonna look like. And I'm just wondering, like, how far are the trees gonna be removed, is my question,
Up
I
to,
guess.
up to what we're defining as our limit of work. So this kind of thick dashed line through here, like that. And then,
So on to the right of the thick dash line, the
In-
trees will
in here.
remain intact?
correct.
So in the, if you don't mind me just pointing real quick, so this thick dash line here, does that mean that the trees will remain here also?
Correct. Inside this area here, everything from here to the street will remain, including the street trees.
So all the trees that are in this area
Will
are
all
gonna remain?
Correct.
Okay, so is the driveway where it was last week, or has the driveway moved from where it was last week?
The driveway's in the same location as it was for the previous.
So the
Hearing.
plan that the gentleman brought out, that was given to us, I think it was at the planning board meeting last week, there was like a,
Yes.
someone had mentioned or had brought up a plan that they
Oh,
liked.
that was the board's peer review engineer,
Okay,
Larry.
so,
So that was a suggestion
So
for
that hasn't-
consideration as an alternative
correct, so
to what
that
was.
has not changed the driveway location.
Correct.
So my other question is, the decorative vegetation or trees or whatever, will the whole entire thing get decorative vegetation?
Only on here, of course, right, where we're closest to Weathersfield. Because this is all going to remain just naturally forested,
Mm-hmm.
we decided not to use the
I mean, I
evergreen
personally don't wanna
trees.
see any of this. And if it helps to make a decorative vegetation all the way along, so I don't have to see it, or the Burns don't have to see it, or the whoever doesn't have to see it, is that something that could be proposed, so that we aren't faced with having to look at this every day of our lives?
Could you tell me where the center of that road is going to be from the pole? Is it pole number 1?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just wanna
Excuse
finish answering your question. I feel there's enough natural vegetation will be left from here to here.
So when you're,
To- to
when you're
really
saying natural
screen it.
vegetation,
Yeah,
so the big tall trees that are currently there now
they will stay.
are gonna stay. So then
Yes.
how are your solar panels gonna get sun? I don't get that.
Well, so the recommendation for a shading analysis is valid. To the best of my knowledge, it has not been prepared yet. It may be that these closer rows of panels won't produce enough and they have to come out. And we'll still get the 2 megawatts. But because the the solar design is happening in the background, and it's very much in flux. There are a lot of parameters that go into selecting which panels are best suited for this location, which is why we had to revise this design. Because currently, the previous design gave us what we thought would be the 2 megawatts. But as the engineers marched through their calculations, their conclusion was, well, that doesn't quite get you there, you need a little bit more. And and after the shading analysis, it may be that these closest panels, they may have to come out, because, to your point, this mass of trees through here may not let enough sunlight in.
And you can't touch those massive trees because of the vegetated wetlands or
Yeah.
whatever it's, buffers or whatever it's called.
Bordering vegetated wetlands.
So I'm sorry to have so many questions, but I have another question.
okay.
So
I'll get to your question in just a minute.
if, God forbid, this thing goes through, who will we have to help us know that, I guess, like, trees are gonna be maintained, it's gonna not be an eyesore, it's gonna be, vegetation's gonna continue to, the decorative things will happen. Like, if this passes and we can't do anything about it, how are we gonna know that all of this decorative vegetation stuff will
Brent had
happen?
read that
Those,
earlier.
those types of questions are more germane to the planning board that, well, you know,
No,
you have to.
it's hard, because it's
You have to
hard read, and I'm
understand it.
thinking, I'm just-
It's kind of like asking me to repair your refrigerator when I'm a bricklayer.
Right.
I probably can't do it very well because that's not my skill set. So it's kind of the same situation here. The Conservation Commission has the jurisdictional authority for the wetlands and the buffer zones, and then they also have the stormwater jurisdiction, which has to do with stormwater in the site. That phrase doesn't talk about all this other activity that is outside those areas or that is not related necessarily to the stormwater. So that's why the planning board, who had a discussion about things like setbacks and about screening and stuff, they have that on their platter for the whole project site, whereas we have kind of these small components, and we apologize for your frustration.
Well, no, I
But
just want to know
it
who
just-
to ask the appropriate thing to.
Exactly, it's very
Yeah.
relevant, and we're trying to direct you where
finish
we
this,
believe.
And can I ask one more quick question? Look, there won't be signage and like
You'll have to ask them.
advertisement out. I'm
That's not
asking
us.
him.
Oh,
Yeah, so far, the only signs that I've been asked to add to the fence is, they're 12 by 18-inch signs that just warn people what's on the other side of the fence. Other than that, there's no advertisement, there's no main sign out front like
DPA sign.
like the Raleigh Market Basket sign, there's nothing like that.
We might request that a sign be installed at the entrance that declares that they're prohibited from using rock salt for ice prevention.
Okay.
Because in many cases, in order to protect the quality of the groundwater, we prohibit the use of rock salt. There are some environmentally more sensitive type ice preventive measures. What is it, magnesium calcite, I think, or something like that, and then calcium chloride.
Calcium chloride.
Is much more benign. So the commission does, through the stormwater permit, does put consider a restriction like that. So there might be a sign that says right on the gates going into the site that rock salt is not allowed for use.
yes, you had a question?
Procedurally, and if I'm out of order, please let me know. The planning board came up with a suggested plan last week. They have completely ignored the suggested plan. They've added arrays, completely kept it between my property and the Beziers. Why would you, as a conservation committee, even consider this if what that was suggested has been completely ignored? Now, maybe I'm out of line, but I'm just asking.
Well,
Can
Mr.
I just say-
Cassiotis, that's a very appropriate question for the
Thank you.
planning board.
For the planning board, that's
in-
not
in
us.
the planning
Well, why
board
would you even
venue.
look at this if they've already,
Because we're only asked about the area that we're not allowing
we're
to
kind of
build
wasting
on.
everyone's time. You should just deny it and move
Well,
along.
wait a minute, what'd you say?
We should just deny it and move
Did you say
along.
we were wasting time?
No, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Mr. Burns?
Yes,
Correct.
Richard Burns, 620 Weathersfield Street. This driveway you're putting in there, I can't remember the pole number. You have it to the left of the driveway.
Yeah, there's an existing pole right there that has three-phase power
And what
capacity.
number is that? It
I
was
don't
on there
know.
before.
I can provide
So
that
you
to
have
the-
changed it. It was gonna be 20 feet from that pole to the right, to the easterly side of that pole.
No, the road's in the same location as it was in the previous design.
Is there another pole on the left side of that?
There is, it's over here by the existing driveway. So,
Oh, okay.
it-
No.
it's right there.
That has changed from my first sheet that I have. It was 120 feet from the pole, which would swing it over to the right more. It has changed since your first?
Well,
Well-
maybe several designs ago, we had it in a different location. Okay. But the previous design, this is in the same location as the
Do
previous
you know
design.
where the grays and my plot
If
is
you go to the
shown it
aerial-
on the map?
the aerial image,
Okay. Give me just a second.
yeah, give me a minute, we have an aerial image we can look at.
My problem is I'm going to be driving out of my driveway and see this gate,
Okay.
chains, everything.
So it's, the lines don't exactly line up. I did the best I could. This is an aerial image. This, I believe, is
That's Tompkins, right? That
Burns
would be
and
mine.
Graves.
Right.
Okay. So it's really hard to see
From what I see
the,
there, it has
driveway.
changed. It has gone to the left more, between our houses.
Okay, well, I know we didn't move it,
Okay.
but you can see that the
Is there any way that driveway can be pushed right so that we don't have to stare at it every day of our lives? I mean, I know that there's little spiky vegetated, wetlands or whatever are right there.
You've delved into an appropriate topic for discussion with the
Planning
planning
board,
board.
okay. I just keep putting PB back.
You got a question?
Yeah, the question is, in some areas on the plan, there's a 100-foot
Could you
setback from the.
identify yourself for the
Dan
record?
Dan White, 634 Weathersfield Street.
Thank you, Mr. White.
So some areas of the plan, there's a 100-foot buffer, and other areas is a 25-foot buffer.
Yeah, anything within 100 feet has to go in front of us, because that's all we control, that little 100 feet. Okay?
Well,
And
the
then how is it-
full extent of the regulated buffer zone is 100 feet, measured starting at the edge of what has been reviewed and determined by delineation standards as being bordering vegetated wetlands or isolated vegetated wetlands. Within that resource area under our bylaw, the 100-foot buffer zone, the Commission and the Wetlands Protection Act, as past protocols, have allowed construction activity, development activity. Under the town's wetlands bylaw, the Commission has the authority to establish up to a maximum 50-foot distance as being no cut, no disturb. They, as a standard operating procedure, have adopted the policy of 25 feet. If there are multiple sensitive wetland resource areas available, lots of times the commission will seek to enlarge that. But in this particular area, we're just dealing with either bordering vegetated wetlands or isolated vegetated wetlands. We don't have any underlying drinking water supply aquifer or something that would allow the commission to justify much more protective offset. There is discussion in the professional field about whether 25 feet is adequate or 35 feet or 50 feet. So it is a particular standard that may very well result in some type of flexibility in the future. But as a policy, the Rowley Commission right now looks to see the minimum of 25 feet.
So then, if there's a solar shading analysis done, and that area right on Weathersfield Street where he was saying perhaps maybe too much shade and they have to lose some arrays, what's to stop them from encroaching, from instead of using a 100-foot buffer, from using a 25-foot buffer and wiping out those trees?
Because through this process and through the stormwater management permit, what's called the limit of work, or the edge of where they can disturb earth and also clear vegetation, that is established as a fixed boundary, which their permit will not allow them to go any further and not to acknowledge that as being the limit of work without them having to come back and quote-unquote make an application request to amend or modify the issued permit. it's very important to also think about the fact that the calculations which say that, such as the basin that's right where the driveway comes down, that sizing of that basin and the area that drains to it is all predicated on that limit of work. So if they expand the limit of work, they could potentially be overtaxing the capacity of that basin to effectively manage stormwater, because they could be generating more stormwater than what they originally designed for. So that's why through the permitting process, the commission establishes the limit of work as being basically, think of it as the Berlin Wall. No clearing, no earth disturbance goes beyond that, because all project calculations are dependent upon that area having been known.
So that's a firm line then?
That's a firm line for this board. For this board, for the stormwater calculations.
That we can control.
And that's the water that sits right there in the front of Weathersfield, is that what you're?
Well, no, what we're talking about is that when you remove forest cover,
Yeah.
and when you disturb those
Right.
soils, you change the ability of that land to accept and infiltrate precipitation.
Right.
Usually what happens in the conversion to lawn or field and the removal of the forest cover is that you generate a little more runoff than originally was occurring. The best thing I can tell you is a soaking wet tree holds a lot of water.
So where that water is right now,
And where the trees are,
I worry that that water is
slows it
gonna
down.
be more now.
well, and that's why they go to this
Right.
design phase where they construct swales, they accentuate the infiltration of the areas they disturb, and they propose these basins that infiltrate and detain and hold the runoff so that the land, once this project is there, just releases the same amount of water that it was releasing prior to any of this disturbance and construction activity, to the best standards that we can currently design to.
So when you say he can pay a fee to disturb something, what exactly are you saying? That seems really
Our
wrong to
wetlands
me.
protection bylaw has a fee structure that is meant to be a disincentive to clearing regulated buffer zone and impacting wetlands. It imposes a square footage fee for an activity that is going into regulated 100-foot buffer zone. And that is meant as an economic disincentive so that it encourages, you see a lot of this project has been moved outside as much as they could, outside the 100-foot buffer zone. That appeared to be a result from earlier discussions with them, that appeared to be the result of their lack of desire to pay a relatively large bylaw fee for the amount of square footage that was being disturbed.
But you can still disturb all that and just say, hey, I'm giving the money, I don't
There-
care if I'm disturbing it?
Well,
Is that, I
there-
mean, that's in layman, because I don't understand all your stuff, so I'm trying to put it in terms that I
That was
understand.
passed at a town meeting in 2003 and reviewed by the Attorney General and became effective in January 2004. It's a commonly used mechanism to try and
To deter people from
avoid,
doing this. if they-
avoid, minimize, and,
Yeah,
okay,
gotcha.
thank you.
Yes.
Carl Fritzen, 21 Forest Street. I'm just looking at that design, and I know it's hard with the, like, looking at numbers, I can't tell, but, and we don't have delineation, we don't have lines to show the hill. So that would be the hill behind my house into the basin, and then it comes up the other side of the hill? Is that what I'm seeing there?
Do you want me to switch to your
Yeah, if
engineered
you go,
plans that have some
121 has topo method.
This one right here? This is the one.
Down, towards the backfield,
Okay,
Shrink it
yeah,
down.
we don't
Just-
have
just a
anything
second.
over that far. I can tell you from walking the whole site that from the back of your home, the topography is,
It goes
it's,
down?
it's slightly away from your home, and then it gets steeper down to the wetland, and then
Right.
across the wetland, and then up the
So
other
you're on
side.
the opposite hill?
Correct, yes.
There's more standing room over in here if you wanna come in. People in the hall.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment. Mary Ann Burns, 620 Weathersfield Street. I know everything is solar today, solar panels, but I never see any sun. November, December, January, February, March. Where's the sun?
It's up there.
It doesn't come out very much.
We're in a valley.
Oh, we have a lot of snowy days, gloomy days, cloudy days.
Any other, yep,
Yes, I was talking about that that pole here, I have it right here. And I gotta pick it up again. It's pole, here it is, pole number 148, that's what you're talking about.
This one here? Okay.
Right, and it shows it here, that the driveway was to the right of it.
I think in
See,
the
down
original
the bottom
plans,
of
it
it,
was definitely to the right of it.
And now it's changed.
Yeah, I think so. Can I just put like a little red dot in there?
That's same.
Oh, no,
Pole number.
that's my, oh, okay, that is
That is
a,
pole number, I went up there, that
yeah,
is pole
no,
number
I'm not
148.
I'm not
And
arguing
the
the
driveway
point.
center's over here,
Yep, that's,
to the right.
so the pole that we're tying into though is that one.
Now
Is
you're
that
going
one
to,
right
so
there.
you've changed.
No, we haven't. What, this identifies our benchmark, which is in a utility pole, correct?
That's right.
But-
Why do you
but-
show that driveway to the right of that pole?
That's where it was for the previous design. We haven't-
Previous,
Yeah,
that's
we-
right, so it
yeah.
got changed.
No, it's in the same location. That's where the road has been.
I have a picture here of the front. And it
We're
just
looking
seems
at
like
the
it's
same
getting
plans.
changed. This is the front of my driveway right here, and pole number 148's on this side. And that was supposed to go 20 feet over, there's my driveway right there.
Okay.
But now it's going to change to that there. If they want to see this,
I can't tell from the photo, but we can definitely compare this with what's on the screen.
Bob, here's the plan, what I call revision E, that was presented to the commission on the 23rd
Okay.
of January. So I don't know if that helps you, or if you
Yep.
can see it better
So-
up there on the screen.
I'm gonna mark on the screen, but, so you can come up here
and
if you
I
like.
can see the square,
Yeah.
right, go down, go right down with your finger. That's
Yep.
pole number 148 that you're
Correct.
pointing to.
That's right.
Now,
So-
the driveway's to the right of that, 20 feet. If
That's
you-
right.
Okay.
Yep,
What does that show there?
same thing. Pole here, road there.
Let me take a look. I'm sorry, I apologize
That's
if
okay.
I'm wrong.
No, it's all right. I'll confirm with my engineers tomorrow. They were giving direction not to
sorry,
move
I
the road.
apologize. It
Okay.
is the same.
I think that's probably.
any other questions in regards to the conservation of this?
So, yeah, Dan White, 63 Weathersfield Street.
Realize I don't know you now.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, yeah, I was on
About the, is there, I guess, simplify things, the reason that the plan is so close to the butters along the edge of the property is due to you're trying to avoid paying a wet, to minimize the cost, or minimize the wetland, disturbance fees, as opposed to having the array more in the center of the property or in the back of the property.
The short answer is yes.
Alright.
Yeah, it was, like Brent indicated, to avoid impacting the 100-foot buffer zone, spread the array out as much as we can, stay outside the buffer zone. Inevitably, we are proposing work within the buffer zone, and we have the fee calculated in accordance with the wetland fee bylaw worksheet. And the applicant will need to pay that fee before any permits are issued.
Where that work is being done is already in the plan, proposed plan?
On this plan, yes.
Okay.
The new issued plans tonight, yes. A majority of it was already shown on the previous design.
Okay.
An additional, let's look at my notes here.
400,000.
Additional 19,500 square feet is proposed with this design, but it's on the island portion, that's on the other side of the wetlands from your house. It's on the far side of that, we call it the peninsula.
All right, so I have another quick question since he just said that.
Is it in regards to the conservation?
I think it is. I think it is. So what you just said is that so that they don't have to pay a big fee for the disturbance thing. That's why it's being spread out all over the creation.
That's one of the primary reasons. The other
So-
is enough real estate to
So
develop
this
the 2
could be-
megawatts.
So if they wanted to pay the fee, this could be consolidated into an area that doesn't disturb
You
all
still can't
neighbors?
build them, you still can't build them wetlands.
Disturbance of wetland.
Yeah, we can't fill the wetlands.
Well, they don't seem to care, they're gonna pay a fee anyway, so. I don't know.
No, you still can't do
No,
anything to
we-
wetlands.
correct, right.
So how about,
Now, this is, you know, you have to be very careful in trying to make statements where you're attaching a direct monetary value to wetland resource areas. Wetland resource areas perform a myriad of functions. That's one of the reasons why there is both a state law and a much more stricter town bylaw to address these areas. Stormwater prevention, pollution prevention, nurturing of public water supply, private water supply, protection of groundwater quality and groundwater quantity, prevention of pollution by the plant community. It uptakes certain things. Stormwater control, flooding control. These are all things that wetland resource areas are known to do and provide as a community benefit in both the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on a statewide basis and the town of Raleigh in their particular local jurisdiction here in the town have made a decision that those wetland resource areas provide an immeasurable function and support of various things that are of value to this community. The fee structure is just meant as a mechanism to try and, again, steer development activity to upland and non-resource areas.
Correct.
It's not meant to say that, oh, that piece of buffer zone is only worth 50 cents a square foot.
Correct.
We just spent over $12 million to put a filtration plant over off of Pingree Farm Road. And part of the reason for that has to do with the fact that the wetland resource areas over there and the type of soil structure no longer kept a particular component, I believe it's manganese, which needed to be mechanically or artificially filtered out of the drinking water. Now, we have a well located on the corner of Haverhill Street and Route 1, the intersection 133 and Route 1. That well provides approximately half the drinking water volume to the town of Raleigh. It does not have a filtration plant associated with it because the quality and the quantity of the water coming out of the ground there is of such a high nature that it doesn't need further mechanical filtration. The whole extensive wetlands behind McDonald's that extends all the way down and into the town of Ipswich, that is where the groundwater aquifer is, and that's all this huge emergent marsh out there. Wetlands perform a very valuable function, and one of the functions that the citizens of the town of Raleigh take advantage of is the fact that a major, like I said, at least 50% of our drinking water doesn't need any further processing except just some chlorination and I think some ultraviolet light. But that is one of the community values that wetland resource areas provide, and so it's really
No, I
it's really
understand
hard
that.
to fix.
I guess with that being
value.
said, I guess it amazes me that you're still allowed to do it to some degree and pay a fee for it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
Is that,
But
if all that
again,
stuff that you just said, which is very important, I totally understand that, and, you know, it was voted and this, that, and the other, whatever, but at the very end of the day, you're still allowed to pay a fee to disturb it.
yeah.
To disturb
And-
As well as to build a house.
the
on it.
outlying areas.
Yeah.
Put a swimming pool on it.
But, you know, we have people that are still building houses in this town.
Different property in different ways. If I could just add one thing
Yeah,
to what
please.
Brent said, and I think it's important. I think the benefits that we have from living in Massachusetts and in the town of Raleigh with our own wetlands bylaw are really important. And if you look at the national scene and all the efforts that are going on nationally to try and degrade the wetlands and remove restrictions, the kind of protections that are in place here is something that's really important, and you should think about that as well. Thank you.
Any more questions in regards to the conservation on this project? I have two people down here, the young lady was the first.
I just, you might have to, I'm Sarah Beeger, 591 Weathersfield. You might just have to rewind a little bit, because I was kind of unsure, like, there was just so much going on with so many people talking a while ago. But I heard somebody talk about the drinking water and having to be a buffer zone, so I just wanted to kind of see if we could discuss that real quick, because I know our well is towards the back corner where, like, surrounded by all the arrays. So I just don't know if that was something, maybe I misunderstood it, but I thought I heard something about having drinking supply water and having a buffer zone.
There are no, as far as I know, there are no minimum setback requirements from a well to anyone's property. If we were proposing a septic system, that would be one thing. There definitely is a setback distance required for that.
Because I know our drinking water, our well supply is in the back corner of our property. And I know that, like, looking at the map right now, it's completely surrounded by the arrays.
So is that something we should, how would we find that? Because our well sits in the very front of our property.
Up front here.
Yeah.
So one of the aspects of the Stormwater Management Standards, the Wetlands Protection Act, is this balance of groundwater recharge. One of the calculations we use is we use our basins to infiltrate our captured stormwater and recharge it into the groundwater. So we keep the natural groundwater balance. This is all in accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act. But before we can infiltrate it, we have to demonstrate that we're cleaning it. And the state, the DEP, has issued a list of what they call best management practices that we use, that we can pick from that best fit the site, that clean the stormwater before it's allowed to infiltrate. So we're balancing the groundwater by allowing it to infiltrate, but cleaning it before it's allowed to infiltrate.
Vegetated wetland plant communities are actually an expression of where groundwater is in close proximity or actually directly exposed at the surface of the ground. It's hard to say without knowing specific criteria about your well, what depth it goes to, what different geologic strata it goes through before it actually picks up water that is then your drinking water supply. But as a general rule of thumb, that's why it's felt that mechanisms to try and keep development activity away from vegetated wetlands and then as far to the outside, if not outside the 100-foot buffer zone, is a strategy that's adopted, and it's in order to keep this development activity from being in close proximity to where that expression of groundwater is right at the surface. And the plant community kind of lets us know, even if you can't see the water, there's a assemblage of plants that react very favorably to the availability of groundwater within 12 to 16 inches of the surface. And that's how we come with this strategy of setting legal boundaries as to which side is bordering vegetated wetlands and which side isn't. It's done scientifically by the species and their association with other species of plants that react to that availability of groundwater. So the mechanism of avoidance is felt, it's cautionary and precautionary enough to be protecting the groundwater, since that's where groundwater would quote-unquote be the most vulnerable, since it's directly exposed or very near the surface of the ground.
There was a gentleman down back with a question.
Yeah, Richard Morse from 577 Weathersfield Street. I'm curious to how the power is going to get to the power lines on Weathersfield Street.
We're going to tie into, there's a three-phase pole here on Weathersfield Street. Throughout the site, because the nature of the soil, we're going to string the wires with wood utility poles, like the ones you see along the roadway.
So that will be right out across from Mr. Burns' driveway?
There's an existing pole here. Once we get on site, the utility poles will run along the gravel driveway on site.
150 feet apart?
Yeah, 120, 150. So we're tying to an existing pole on Weathersfield Street.
And the power company has already approved, or have they asked questions? Or?
I'll let the applicant speak to that. They've been dealing with Raleigh Municipal as far as the permitting effort.
Raleigh Municipal Lighting Department performed an interconnect study and design
Any other questions regarding the conservation, stormwater management? All right, there's not much we can do with the,
Right, well, it would be
Timing.
appropriate to request permission for a continuance. Is the continuance to our February 13th meeting? Well, we don't know. We don't know whether H.L. Graham Associates, what their turnaround is gonna be, and we also don't know the planning boards. Their meeting is the 7th, I think
I
it
believe
was.
it's this,
It's the seventh.
the 7th, yes, thank you.
Excuse me a second. Brent, I just had a quick question about your memo here. You said the office review has identified parcels that were not originally listed in the previous two applications. Well, is that gonna require an additional site walk?
he's gonna have an additional one anyway.
No, I've actually, I didn't know, I wasn't fully informed about the parcel change, but by revision D, was it?
It would have been the previous revision.
Well, anyway,
Yes,
when we went out and
Yes.
identified the isolated vegetated wetland area, I was going across parcels, which at the time I didn't realize they hadn't been originally listed in the application.
Mhm.
We have changed both our posted agendas, so per the open meeting law, as well as the chairman read a much more detailed listing, which included, based on our, again, we hadn't received these plans, but based on the last revision of the plans that were presented on January 23rd, included all the parcels known to be involved with the project. We will now, getting new plans, we will revisit that and make sure, but we believe we declared all the parcels that proposed activity is
Okay.
taking place on. In fact, probably a little more, because we also are still listing some of the first ones, because the applicant hadn't revised their application sheet, so we listed everything in order not to forget something.
Sure, okay. And then just a question for Mr. Blanchett.
Yes, sir.
The incursion to the 100-foot buffer on the easternmost corner of that lot up to your right.
Up here?
No, I'm sorry, the easternmost.
Oh,
right
I'm sorry,
there.
yes.
Is that the only incursion to the 100-foot?
No, there's, this is one. The other is a strip along this
That's right, I remember
eastern
you
side.
did mention that. You did
Yep,
mention
and
that, I'm
then a
sorry.
portion of the gravel driveway
Okay.
through this area is within 100 feet.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
No work closer than 25 feet.
So do you feel you'll be able to have the information that Brent has requested
Well, let's see.
by the 13th?
We're going to make our final submittal to planning board tomorrow, to the planning board's peer review engineer, Mr. Graham. At that time, we're hoping we can get a quick turnaround for the next planning board hearing, which is on the 6th, right? I'm sorry, 7th, excuse me, 7th. We're hoping you can hear us as soon as we can after that.
That would be our meeting number
13th.
Got it.
Okay, so that's an affirmative?
That would be the soonest? Okay. 13th it is.
All right, there's not much more that can be done
What
here
time is that
tonight.
meeting on the 13th?
The 13th will be 7:30.
7:30?
Well, we haven't
Well,
set the
we have
agenda
an agenda
yet,
that'll be
but yes, we convene at 7:30.
Yeah.
Early.
This was early because this is a meeting over and above, because we realized you had so many questions.
Yeah, and again, thank you for taking your time out to meet with us.
All right, do I hear a motion?
Well, do we have the applicant's permission for continuance of both stormwater and notice of intent to February 13th?
Is there a possibility to have a meeting the day after the planning
No.
meeting?
I don't believe so. Which would,
It's a volunteer board, and
we
I
don't get
defer
paid,
that
we
they,
just give all this time because we're concerned with the environment and the town.
Very much so.
So, you know, we'd like to have more people, that would make it easier and better.
I'm glad someone's concerned about the land and the people.
So, do I hear, so would you like to move it to the 13th, or we can have it later if you'd like? But we can't get it earlier,
Then we take the earliest that you're able to
which would be the 13th.
accommodate.
I will move that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right,
And that was for both applications.
that was for both, Bud.
Yeah, okay.
Which unanimous is continued to February 15th.
That was also a motion to adjourn, or should we have that now?
Do that as a separate motion.
We have a motion to adjourn. Hey, don't jump out of your seat. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Going to Hartford.
Oh, that's just the date, though.
I'm gonna stay 2 days, it's easy.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't wanna drive down one day, turn around.
Can we make the meeting in the year of 2020 to give you time to sell the house?
You're gonna run this every time unless you get a
Yeah,
concern.
I want that.